We all set, Katie? Looks like it's going. You're on mute, Katie.
Yep, it's good.
All right, we're good.
We're good. So I'm going to call to order the Norwalk Housing Corporation meeting for February 20th. And I've just called it to order. Roll call was have myself, Lisa Cooper, David Westmoreland, and Mary Peniston. Staff, we have Brian Bedoli and Katie and Eugenia. So, and anyone out there who wants to participate publicly? No public participation? No? Okay. Move on to item 4, administration approval of the minutes of the December 12th, 2023 regular meeting. Do I have a motion? Lisa made the motion. I'll second it. Any open for discussion? Any changes, additions, corrections? Anyone's name misspelled? No? Okay. I'll call for a vote then. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
And John, I'll abstain since I wasn't at the meeting.
Okay. So John Agneri, Lisa Cooper, and David Westmoreland approved. Mary Peniston abstained. Item number B is approve Norwalk Housing Corporation statement of revenues and expenditures and balance sheets for all funds for year to date December 31st, 2023. And I'll turn that over to Eugenia.
Thanks, John. For the period year to date, December 31st, 2023, the Norwalk Operating Fund 400 had revenues of $14,000 and expenses of $8,000, which resulted in a net operating surplus of $6,000. The balance sheet for this fund had assets of $744,000, liabilities of $371,000, and net assets of $373,000. The Norwalk Revolving Loan Fund 450 had an operating surplus of $1,500. And then the balance sheet for this fund had total assets of $126,000 and total liabilities and net assets of $126,000.
Opening it for questions, comments. Anyone? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Unanimously approved. The only administrative items on the agenda. We go to, I see nothing on the agenda for business, new business, old business, or executive session. Is that correct? Or nothing else to go? Well, then I'll ask for a motion to adjourn the Norwalk meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Okay, Lisa, David, Lisa seconded. All in favor? Aye. Unanimous. So we're adjourning the Norwalk meeting and going to the redevelopment meeting. Right. We'll switch to, I'll now call to order the Norwalk Redevelopment meeting of February 20th, 2024. Called it to order, roll call. Attending are myself, Lisa Cooper, David Westmoreland, Mary Peniston. Staff is Brian, Katie, and Eugenia. Any public participation? No public participation. So we'll move to item 4, administration. Approval of the minutes of the January 9th, 2024 regular meeting. Do I have a motion? Lisa. David, what seconds? Anybody have corrections, adjustments, name changes? No? All in favor? Then I'll call a vote. All in favor? Unanimous?
I'll
Uh,
abstain again since I wasn't at the meeting.
I correct myself. John Igneri, Lisa Cooper, and David Westmoreland have approved. Mary Pettiston has abstained. Next, I'll move on to the financials. Approve the Norwalk Redevelopment Agency Statement of Revenues and Expenditures and balance sheets for all funds for year to date, December 31st, 2023. I have a motion. I'll make the motion. Someone second? Lisa seconds. Then turn it over to you, Eugenia.
Okay, for the period year-to-date December 31, 2023, the operating fund 100 had revenues of $834,000 versus a budget of $755,000 for a favorable variance of $79,000. Total actual operating expenses were $876,000 versus a budget of $954,000 for a favorable variance of $78,000. Legal expenses include $2,700 paid to Shipment for 1517 Chestnut Street, which will be reimbursed to the agency. The actual operating deficit of $42,000 versus the budgeted operating deficit of $193,000 resulted in a favorable variance of $157,000. Let me go to the balance sheet for Fund 100. And at December 31st, this fund had $4,848,000 in cash, accounts receivable, grants receivable, due to other funds, property and right of use assets, and other assets. And also there's $1,637,000 in net loans receivable. This fund has $351,000 in total liabilities and $2,934,000 in total net assets. The financial statements for the other funds are also included in this packet, and there are no major variances except for the CDBG non-revolving fund 300, which had an operating deficit of $171,000. This was drawn down in January, and it has been reimbursed. Fund 500 had an operating deficit of $680,000, which was billed and reimbursed by the state of Connecticut. And that's all, John.
That's it.
Yes.
All right. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote on the approval of the redevelopment agency's statement of revenues and expenditures and balance sheets. All in favor? Unanimous. I'll move on to item 5, business. First item is design review, 6 Butler Street. I understand there have been recent developments, so I'll turn it over to you, Brian, to bring us up to date.
Yeah, so the applicant just reached out to us today. I guess they're considering some other options, so they wanted us to just move the item to our next meeting if it's okay with the group.
That's fine. I'll call for a vote on that. Is everyone in favor of that? They're unanimous. We're moving on to item B, work program update. I'll turn it back to you, Brian.
Okay, great. This is just more of a follow-up. I know at one of our past meetings, we talked about having a little bit more comprehensive updates at our quarterly meetings, which this is what this is. You'll note by the balance sheet that we go over as well. They're kind of our larger meetings. So I wanted to just kind of give you some insight in terms of some of our bigger projects and how we're kind of managing them and where we're at with everything. I'll take it pretty high level because I know some of you have time commitments after this meeting, and then I could drill down into anything if you like as I go through it. So the first one I wanted to talk about is the work over at 437 West Avenue. That's the underground utility and streetscape work that we're doing with the DECD and OPM grant around the Pinnacle property. We've made really good progress with the underground utilities. Basically, all the conduit's been laid. And then we're going to be going into pulling the wires and getting it ready to be hooked up, at which point they'll finalize their vertical construction, and then we'll go out for the streetscape package because we don't want to be putting in streetscapes and then them running them over and ruining them as they complete the vertical construction. So we're just going to start the streetscape design in the next quarter here in that regard. So 1517 Chestnut, that's the project right next to the train station on the corner of Henry and Chestnut. We have a lot of grants that have gone into that, so we're continuing our grant management responsibilities. We have the Community Challenge Grant, which we actually are, we're working on design. There's going to be another public outreach meeting in that regard from the transportation side of things. But the underground utility work has been designed, and we actually already bid it out. The bids are due back this Friday. So that work will be starting soon. We're working very closely with the city to make sure that that gets done, in accordance with their standards. They're actually the ones helping us manage the bidding. Also, you're going to start seeing some work there for the remediation work that's required from the DECD grant that we got. They're going to be starting to dig effectively the foundation for the building, probably in the next couple months here. So it's going to be a pretty big project. We're just going to be finishing the bid docs. Actually, they just finished up today. We're going to be sending them out to DECD for a review. And then we're going to be bidding that project, at which point we're going to have to, notify everybody about the temporary parking arrangement that's tied to that, and getting that work started so that they can start vertical construction, hopefully in the spring here. Also, obviously, the land disposition agreement that we've worked on with the city on that, we're having to amend it a bit for to actually reflect what the type of brownfield remediation work we're going to be doing. Given the way that the contracts were structured, we'll be going to council for a small amendment just to reflect the actual nature of work at the next meeting. In terms of Webster Lot, we're still doing the financial analysis that you all approved at one of the last meetings. I expect to wrap that up in March, at which point, that's going to be influencing the negotiation with the developer, and then we'll be seeking council approval from there, and then working on the land disposition agreement, first with the term sheet and then with the full agreement. Concurrent to that, we have attracted $14 million, $13 million in state assistance for this project as it stands. The first step will be the cleanup. We'll have to go through a phased cleanup approach. We received $5 million in grants from DECD to do that work. And we'll probably just start where the parking garage would be in that project and then continue out to the larger site as that phased development would occur, pending all the approvals. And then the SIF infrastructure grant, the community investment fund, is what we got to upgrade the sewer system, the sewer laterals in there, and help accommodate that for the site plan. So we'll be doing that work once we get the assistance agreement in place, which that's the stage we're at right now. Wall Street Place, very exciting developments in that regard. They've secured a good deal of financing and the credits that they needed for the state. From the state, so we're working with them to finalize that, make sure that the infrastructure, that work that they're required to do as part of the land disposition agreement is done correctly. So we're working with the developer to negotiate that out, but also expect some significant construction to start in the spring. And I know everyone's been waiting; that's been a long time coming. So I'm happy to report, and I'm holding my breath as always. But here we go. So I'll keep you posted as that develops. And I'm sorry, are there any questions so far? I've been going a little fast.
Yeah, so define spring. Is that March, April, or May?
That is the proverbial question I ask every time I speak with the developer. And what they've committed in the past was March, but I don't think that's where we're at. I think we're probably looking at April, May before you're seeing significant work personally. But I have an update call with them tomorrow, so I'll be able to have a more refined information after that.
Sorry, I'm very cynical. So that because I'm guessing by May it'll be, oh, we're going to start in the fall. So anyway, whatever.
That's what I've heard every time, but I feel like that's, we kick the can down the road and we're pushing very hard. I will tell you that. I mean, we have bi-weekly calls with them, just making sure that everything's going through with the state. That's been their big hurdle as of late. It hasn't really been on them. It's been securing the financing and the credits, getting the state to approve their construction plans. There's just a lot of work that's going on that point that necessarily isn't their delay. So to just, be clear on that point.
Brian, could you just remind me who the developer is for that?
Yeah, it's JHM, or referred to as McClutchies. But I can keep you guys posted. Oh, sorry, David.
Is there a point where we can fire them or just say we're not playing anymore if they don't actually do anything?
I think that'd be a better question for Mario, who negotiated the LDA and all the terms in that. I think there are performance provisions in there, but so far they've been adhering to all of their performance provision, and most of it, the delay is dependent on financing, and that's the hoop that they're jumping through. So there isn't anything that I'm aware of in the agreement that relates to, if they can't get their financing, it's a different story, but it looks like everything's going to go through in that regard.
I mean, if they don't start actual construction this year, regardless of whose fault it is, we need to do something else. Because this is ridiculous. I mean, I'm tired of being hopeful on it because it's just nothing happens.
Yeah.
Great.
Anyway, all right. Sorry, I'll try to be less depressing.
No, you're good. You're good. No, I understand. I mean, it's been 3 years of this even since I've been here, and I know you've been dealing with it well before I got here. So
I'm just saying to myself, here we go again.
yeah. So cautiously optimistic on that one personally, which is the first time I've ever felt that way. So
that's something. I'll hang on to that.
yeah, you can hang on a little causely. Just make sure that's in there. All right. So Harbor Loop Trail, you all I think are aware of the $6 million that were secured by Senator Duff helped us secure that for the Urban Act grant through the Urban Act grant. We're in the process of doing design and engineering on that. It's definitely going to be a long permitting process, which we understand from deep. We're in the ballpark of 18 to 24 months to actually get that thing permitted. And this is for the sections along East Avenue at 134 and 148. So I'll keep you posted as that develops, but we are already in active design. We did the survey and yeah, it's moving in that regard. We're going to have our first permit meeting with deep probably at the early March, early next month.
So I can't see your column headings.
I'm sorry.
The construction for Harbor Loop Trail, is that in 2025 or 2026?
That is actually 2026, 2027, I would say, because the permitting is going to take 18 to 20, the whole of 18 to 24 months alone, just working with deep.
All right.
Once we start constructing, it's not that long of a period. It's getting the permitting because we're going over the water.
Right.
To avoid some property constraints. So it's going to involve quite a bit of a discussion with them and the Army Corps.
Could you go back to having a little bit larger and it's really tiny for me to read. Thank you.
Is that good?
Yes.
Great. So here is our litany of facade improvement projects with the MLK grant. We have an active about 20 to 25 projects right now in the hopper. So we have plenty of work. I think what we've done is we've batched them. So we're trying to do about 6 every 6 months with the amount of staff. I brought on actually a consultant to help us expedite that though, because we're a little bit behind just due to some of the state grant contracting things. So we're trying to do 2 batches at a time, but we have a lot of small level work, siding, roofs, porches, windows, but very impactful stuff throughout South Norwalk and the MLK corridor. So these are the addresses of everything that's been sort of allocated funding, and we're just going to be pushing, getting along, getting these projects done.
What's 55 Wall Street? What building is that?
I want to say that's and I apologize, I don't have them off the top of my head. I think that's the someone's doing a roof at the coffee Cafe Aroma.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but I could always follow up. Steven, manages these ones, but I could get more detail as needed.
Well, it's great. That's a lot of stuff. It looks like
very good.
Getting stuff done.
Yeah, we're pushing on this one. I have Steven's been really good. We just finished Columbus Court too. I don't know if I mentioned that, and I didn't mention that in this community challenge grant, but I don't know if you've all been there to the development, the condo on the corner of Chestnut and Henry, but we finished the siding, we finished the roofing, we've done all the balconies. It's looking like new. So we're happy about that. And the owners are very happy there.
Thank you.
And so in terms of some of our planning projects that we have, we're about to deliver the sustainability and resilience plan to the ad hoc committee we've been staffing for the Common Council. There'll be a presentation on that at the March 13th ad hoc meeting. And a lot of that I'll talk a little bit about tonight about next steps in terms of sort of implementation and how it relates to our overall planning program. But I think we're going to really be playing a role in performance monitoring, making sure we help, the city kind of in the technical assistance capacity, implement some of these projects and keep the ball rolling once they have the plan in place. And I'll be sure to share the draft of that plan. We're just finalizing some of the design elements right now. One component of it is actually, and I'll talk more about this tonight, is a future ready component. As part of our DECD funded Brownfield GIS grant, you'll recall we engaged a consultant to host a series of technical workshops with city staff to scope out sort of the overall data needs and how we can actually use data to improve sustainability throughout the city, what we need to do from a data governance perspective, as well as a just general implementation perspective. So we've had those workshops, and a lot of the findings are included in the packet tonight, but I'll explain that separately. But this is some of the work that we'll be working on to continue that. The economic impact analysis, we've been working with ESI, as we talked about, to kind of take a look at the impact of our redevelopment projects over the past 20 years. So I expect that work to advance pretty quickly over the next 2 months here, and then hopefully we'll report to you guys in the early spring so we can kind of talk about the revenue that's been generated, some of the expenditures, and hopefully just kind of contribute to an informed conversation of development throughout town and all the work that's been done in the past and that's being currently done in terms of what that means for the tax base. And also, both from a revenue generation perspective, but also from a expenditure perspective. And then finally, we have to start thinking about our strategic plan update. The shelf life of the one we did when I first came in was 2025, and it's pretty crazy to think that we're already coming up on that, and we need to start thinking ahead. I know it's only 2024, but I think, just as we look at these projects, as we've evolved as an agency, it's in my head. And I think in the next couple months here, I want to, start presenting some thoughts to you all about where I think, it's a good direction for us, and have a conversation, hear what you think, and just sort of start the discovery process. I think I felt like when I came in, the strategic plan was a little bit mandated, but I think it became something that's been very helpful for us. So I think I want to make sure that we, keep that alive and make sure it reflects what we're working on and what the needs we're fulfilling within the city. And then finally, just as way heads up, is just thinking about redevelopment plans. Our South Norwalk redevelopment plan expires in 2026, and then the Wall West is in 2029. So we'll have to look at updating those. But it's a ways out. But I just wanted you all, while we're sitting here today, to know kind of where we're forecasting out and keeping our eye on this.
Well, that's good. I'm glad we're not going to just let them expire and then remember a year later.
Yeah, that didn't work out so well in the past.
I just have one question back on the facade improvement projects. 135 Flax Hill Road, store porch repairs.
Yeah.
Are they up to date on their loans with Norwalk Housing?
That's a very good question.
That was a huge issue, and years ago, I don't know, 10 years ago, and I'm not sure we should be giving them a grant if they're not in compliance with their loans to us.
No, thank you for bringing that up. I will look into that, David, and if it's okay, and I can get back to you, because I assume Stephen looked into this, but we'll definitely look into it.
Okay.
I just don't have the information offhand.
Yeah, that's fine. That's it. That's all I have. Thank you.
Very good. So yeah, we have a lot going on, but it's all good stuff.
Okay, thank you, Brian. We'll move on to item C, DC Brownfield Round 19 grant. Here we have to authorize the Executive Director of Norwalk Redevelopment Agency to apply for DECD Brownfield Round 19 grant and negotiate and execute any and all agreements in conjunction with Norwalk Housing Authority for grants management and environmental remediation services at Meadow Gardens.
Yeah. Can you guys see my screen okay?
Yes.
So I think we've talked about this project. I know a lot of you are aware of it. This is actually, the Housing Authority is the lead on this project, but they've identified a need for about $2.5 million of remediation funds. There's a lot of asbestos in these buildings, and this would help contribute to their financial plan. I think we're looking at 54 units. There's a description in your packet that was provided directly by the Housing Authority for those of you that may not be so familiar with the project. But I think this has been a long time coming for them to upgrade these units or to rehab them, effectively reconstruct them, because I know the condition isn't adequate for the type of housing that they're hoping to provide. So this grant is available through DCD. This is one of the ones that we received from some of our other projects, but this one will be done in conjunction with the Housing Authority.
Thank you.
Is there going to be a streetscape component as well?
Yeah, yeah, they have, I mean, as part of their approvals, they're going to be doing some streetscapes in that area. They're in the packet, I think, and there's some
There-
interior work. I don't know how much
They-
work is actually done on the public right away though on Meadow Street.
Yeah, no, I was asking, do they want us to find money for them for that?
They have not asked me to find them money in that regard.
All
Good.
right. Any other questions, thoughts? Seeing none, did we make a motion to authorize the executive director? I don't think so. I'll
Not
call-
yet.
Call for motion. David Westmoreland moves it. I'll second it. And I'll call for a vote. All in favor, of giving him the authority? It's unanimous. Thank you. Moving to item D, South Norwalk Community Redevelopment Plan, Digital Equity Strategy. To authorize the agency executive director to negotiate and execute any and all agreements for the development of a digital equity strategy and data platform in support of South Norwalk Community Plan. Brian, it's a mouthful.
Yeah, sorry, it's definitely, and it's yeah, it's a very interesting project. So, as you recall, at the last meeting, we authorized the development of the South Norwalk Community Plan, funded by some of the funds coming from GGP in the city. In addition to some economic impact analysis work that's required in support of that project. As we've started that scoping and planning process, a lot of the things we're hearing from the community is this general push for a land economic solution to some of the challenges in South Norwalk. And I think as we've talked to our economic consultants, we've talked to our planning consultants and doing our own research, some of the things that we're hearing are you have to be very careful with. Sometimes they backfire. For instance, when we invest in infrastructure in the community, sometimes that can exacerbate the effects of gentrification and displacement by making it more attractive of an opportunity to invest. So we've kind of taken a step back from the whole typical planning process of land economics. How could we, highest and best use overdevelop or develop this to its highest and best use potential, and really take a community-driven approach to this plan? What suite of services will ultimately help the quality of life in the neighborhood is really the question that we're looking at. So it's not going to be it's not going to be a silver bullet to solve this problem. We're just recognizing that it's going to take a lot of different things that we're going to hear from the community that we don't have all figured out today. But we have identified a strategy to approach it based on some best practices. I recently was involved in a peer exchange with the city of Orlando and our planning consultants, VHB, who had a neighborhood in Orlando called Paramore, which was represented a very similar parallel. It was a parallel to some of the things we're dealing with in South Norwalk. And one of the things they did there was really look to technology and trying to figure out how they could enhance equity through digital means. So I provided some of that information. There's a lot of backup in this, and it's a much larger conversation in terms of how they did that. But it really teamed up well with some of the work that I mentioned before that we've been doing with the Smart City workshops as part of the Brownfield GIS application, hearing from the city on just basic management things that they have been doing that they need help with from a data perspective, whether that's better managing of maintenance equipment or light resources or things of that nature. And then also trying to figure out ways to use data in a way that helps us with our decisions and visualize those decisions during the South Norwalk Community Plan. Because a lot of the issues that we're going to be trying to tackle are going to be very complex. And we want to make sure that we have the infrastructure in place to be able to answer those intelligently and also provide educational components throughout this whole discussion, which is going to be an interesting one. It's going to be one that I think a lot of communities aren't trying to face gentrification in the face or displacement in the face as much as I think we are with this plan. So what this proposal that you're seeing in front of you tonight is effectively a mechanism to develop additional tools in our toolbox as we try to navigate these challenges. And in terms of the specific challenges for more tangible examples, there's a big community concern about truck traffic going through South Norwalk. And just the general noise and the equity issues of that, saying why does it have to come through our neighborhood and pollute it with its noise or congestion and all those those factors. So what we're proposing to do is to create a data platform that would allow us to sort of consume all of the data that we've developed through past studies through the South Norwalk TOD plan, and then we're going to develop in this plan, and be able to visualize that in an effective manner to help with decision making. So when we're in community workshops or we're in community charrettes, we could show people the impacts of different truck routing, different ways that we could provide digital access to people that may not be able to afford broadband, and taking a deep dive in sort of the digital components of this as part of this planning study. So the reason why we're bringing it for you today is because we would like to run it concurrent with the planning study, because it'll be sort of a sub-working group as part of the overall effort. So one of the things that we've already heard is wanting to have a little more outreach. And I think this is a really effective way, and it was effective for the city, Paramore neighborhood to do it. One of the things that came out of the Paramore neighborhood plan that I learned in this peer exchange was the deployment of these picnic tables that are solar powered, and they offer charging and Wi-Fi internal to them. So people that may not have internet access at home or during a storm event or any sort of thing, it's just very innovative strategies that we need this data platform to effectively support. So I know that's a lot, it's a mouthful, but in terms of the tangible things, in terms of the money, what we're talking about for this, it's all included in your packet, but I'll talk it at a high level and then I'll open it up for questions. What we're benefiting from first and foremost is the grant we received from the DECD Brownfield GIS. That enabled us to do these workshops and scope out this sort of data infrastructure, which is modeled in the packet. And I'll go through any technical questions that you have. I just want to sort of give you the concepts. But what's nice about that grant is it's not just a one and done for the Brownfield GIS. The urban data platform is something that we could leverage for all of these different plans and studies, and also peripheral maintenance activities that maybe Parks wants to do, or parking sensor management. And that was the idea behind the Brownfields GIS, is we're going to be creating this GIS-based application in the cloud on this data platform, but we want to leverage it as many ways as possible. And the one that's in front of us today is through this plan. So the total amendment that you're seeing from VHB is $171,000. My proposal is that we just authorize the first two tasks. The last task is actually this development of a equity viewer, where the idea is that we will come out with some implementation recommendations in this plan and then develop a GIS-based application or a dashboard application to track our performance coming through. But that isn't adequately scoped from my perspective. So what I'm saying is that we would authorize the first two tasks at present with the full picture in mind. Obviously, that's what would be approved tonight. But the actual implementation would be to scope that out, start the community outreach, start developing this digital equity strategy, and then refine what that scope looks like after that. So that would be about $70,000, about $110,000 total coming out of our city capital account that's designated for planning in South Norwalk. There's also a component in here that relates to our Brownfields GIS grant and also our city capital account for planning, where we had a contract, and this was previously authorized through one of our grant authorizations. But I took a similar approach to the Brownfields GIS application, where we only authorized the first two tasks. I didn't want to box us into the development cost without knowing exactly what we wanted. So this would be an authorization, or basically it would add on to the existing authorization for $28,000 to DKSR, our existing vendor for that, to finish the Brownfields GIS application, and then to work with MetroCog, who's hosting our GIS application, for $41,000 for this data catalog. That would also be integrated into our digital equity strategy, because one of the ideas that I have is to try to find a way to work with the community in South Norwalk and some of the business groups like I think it's YBI and other initiatives that can leverage this data that we're harvesting in an open data platform, and they can start learning how to build their own applications and try to take something from an education approach into this plan. And then finally, the last value of that open data catalog is, if we are one of the only communities in Connecticut that have it, because the whole technology that we're building this data platform and everything equity strategy off of is open source. So it's open to the public. And I see an opportunity for us to go to UConn, to go to other institutions that have programming capacity, to see what their students can give to Norwalk as part of this. We have a lot of resilience planning that's going on. And if we are able to create this centralized hub of data, for Norwalk, I think we create a veritable gold mine for people that know how to harness it. So I know that was probably more than you were ready to hear tonight, but I'm I'm here to answer any questions you have. And yeah, I'll stop talking.
Mary has a question.
So I understand the equity portion in terms of the plans to have data access, but I don't understand the connection between this data thing and how it would impact gentrification. So could
Yeah,
you give
so
one or two examples of how that might work?
yeah, absolutely. So one thing that we want to take a look at, it's really referred to as evidence-based planning. So when we say, there's equity issues in South Norwalk, well, what does that actually mean in terms of from anything, any application? So one of the examples is looking at vulnerable populations and their exposure to flooding, the flood risk. So if we're able to bring in the flood risk data and the census data through this open data platform, we can make more intelligent decisions in terms of where we're going to invest money to help with that. Another example is like public health data. So we're going to be able to do these correlations between multiple data sets that are typically siloed across through a ubiquitous platform that allows us to make those sort of inferences and do more advanced data analysis for decision making.
So it will affect the decisions that redevelopment is making?
Well, collectively as a group, right? So like, for instance, the truck traffic example, right? If we have all the traffic data, we're able to visualize that and we could show how it's impacting various low-income neighborhoods and who's shouldering the burden of that more than others. It's for discussion purposes in that specific example. Or there's ways that we could also tap into heat sensors in cars through this project to look at heat issues, heat map, heat effects. Yeah.
So I understand the open data part, but then people have to ask the right questions in order to use it in the ways you have. Are you setting it up such that it's the design of it is intended to lead people to ask those questions so that you're looking at the impact?
The way we're setting up, so it's basically driven by our outreach. So what we have in the scope is that we're going to develop 10 cases based on what we hear from people. We're not trying to just solve problems
Got it.
because they're fun to solve. We're going to have an outreach meeting as part of the first task, and we're going to say, yeah. So exactly your point, Mary. I think you're on the same page. Yeah. So we're going to have the outreach meeting in the first task. What are the issues? And then we're going to map how we could use data to help solve them, and then bring that information. Because I think a big component of this plan is to make sure that we're all understanding things in the same way. And we need some sort of data and quantitative information to help us in those arguments. It's going to be
Yeah,
complicated.
I just heard of an interesting one where they were looking at public health data so that they were identifying in public housing in New York where there are problems with public health problems like lead, et cetera, because they were looking at Medicaid data. And so they were prioritizing repair in those buildings based on what they were getting with Medicare data. So it's something like that. But the question, I guess the only piece I just want to know is then how does it become actionable? So I like the idea of how it's set up, but if it's not set up being actionable in the right way, it doesn't do any good.
Yeah, and that's sort of where my head's at going with the viewer at the end of it is we're going to identify these use cases in terms of how we could, use data to make decisions or to visualize certain things. And we're going to have a list of project outcomes that we want from the plan. So I want them to be able to be basically like key performance indicators of, what is going to be the poverty rate? What is going to be, what are we trying to do? And are we doing it? And by having this infrastructure in place, we'll be able to monitor that. If we start the planning now with the planning process, as opposed to trying to do it afterwards and, things get lost in the sauce, I guess.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a couple. So I'm going to just give you a specific example because you mentioned the truck traffic. One of the things I've recently understood is that with Argent buying the Manresa property and wanting to put housing on it, that there'll have to be at least 10,000 dump truck loads of soil removed, and then of course soil added, but contaminated soil removed. And the only route in and out is down Woodward Avenue through South Norwalk, which I think is going to be a nightmare because they're not allowed to take it by barge off. So would we be able to model that against this data set that you're building?
Yeah, absolutely.
Show the impact to the people that live down there. I mean, it's
Yeah, what's nice
pretty
about
crazy.
what we're doing is it's not just going to be limited to this project, but to your point, yes. I mean, the answer is yes, we can do that. I think it's going to set us up to create what's referred to as a digital twin. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that concept, where you basically create a virtual model of your city so that you're able to test the sensitivity of these interventions. So if we say, okay, Manresa is a component, let's do some, truck projections of truck traffic that we can expect. What does that look like, and how can we visualize that? That's exactly the application of this technology.
That's what I thought. Man, plus resilience. It's like really, I mean, the whole place is underwater and sandy. So yeah, let's build some housing there. What a great idea.
And I think it's correlating the power of the platform is being able to correlate data sets. Like you just mentioned, two data sets, right? Like looking at hurricane information and then vulnerable populations or infrastructure. And data typically exists in silos and in many organizations, but particularly cities. And I think what we're trying to do is to create this layer that's able to harvest data from each individual silo so we can make inferences based on those through our planning work. But then there's also a whole asset management component of this. It's also that this is basically, we're setting this up to be a platform to be shared across the entire city. And I think
And
it's a strategic direction for us as an agency, to be honest.
in that regard, and I don't necessarily think this is a good thing, what is the synergy, and is there going to be an integration between this and the city's GIS system?
Yeah, so when we've done these workshops, we've had all the IT people there, Lindsay King and everybody. So it's a complementary factor. So when I think, and it's hard for me to show because I don't have it developed, I'm going to have the first sort of like urban data platform portal developed in the next couple of months here. But the idea is it's going to be a screen. You're going to have three different types of screens you could get it's based on sustainability. So it'll be economic, environmental, and social equity. It's going to have a bunch of boxes that are going to show data, key performance indicators, but then it's going to iframe in the city's GIS. So you'll be able to open up the city's GIS in there, and it's going to be fully integrated in that regard.
Okay.
So that'll be the backbone. The reason why we're using MetroCog is because they offer hosting services that are saving us a ton of money. I built that system there, and I'm very familiar with it. And they're going to be hosting the data, and they have geo servers that we won't have to pay. Like the maintenance it'd be a lot for us to try to set all that up internally. And also, I wouldn't want to put that burden on the city either.
Right. That's what I was thinking too. So good. It sounds good.
So Brian, just so like I'm kind of understanding, the goal that we use this process is basically to help like the vulnerable parts of our city to improve.
Exactly. Yeah, I think what it is to be able to really have very informed discussions around what's happening in South Norwalk.
Mhm.
And I think, we're going to generate a lot of economic data. We're going to generate lots of spreadsheets. We're going to generate a lot of things, but without visualizing them, it's very hard to make it make sense to the community. And for us to be able to, so this is enabling us to do that.
And
And so
will there
then-
be some, oh, sorry,
Nope.
Lisa.
No, so there'll be like, I know before like you used to have like certain community meetings or whatever, so there'll be a lot of those that'll be going on.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I think as Mary mentioned, yeah, I mean, this is going to increase the amount of community meetings, and I think that's the most important thing for this plan, in terms of us getting out there and actually talking to people. And like I said, the way we have it scoped out right now, it's still a bit of an open-ended question. I've been providing examples to make it more tangible for you all, but the examples and use cases that we actually do are going to be driven by the discussions we're having with the community. What are the issues? How can we use data to help address those or help understand them better to make more informed decisions when we start making funding recommendations or, programmatic policy changes and all of that.
Okay.
So I wanted to follow up on where Lisa was going. It would seem to me that there might need to be some training. So because people may talk about the problems, but they might not be able to make the connections of what this looks like. And I'm just hoping that there's opportunities that interested members in the community will have opportunities to learn more how it works. And I also think it would be really great to be able to engage high school students.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I mean, it might be a nice project with the school system in terms of building some skill sets, but also making it people from the community. So you'd have community members that could also explain it to other community members.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why we were favorable to this open data platform, because what's beneficial about this is we have that internal, ecosystem that we're creating. And if we really leverage it, like you're saying, to the Board of Eds, but it's also we could leverage other cities around the world that are using this platform and benefit from what they're doing. So when someone builds a dashboard, we have the code to it for free. So it's really creating this ecosystem that I think is very unique in that regard. But that's exactly the idea, Mary. And I think I just wanted to provide this. I know I don't want to get too detailed in the technical, but to David's question, we have this geodata infrastructure that'll be powered by the city's GIS services. And then the open data platform kind of serves as a larger data lake, if you will, that will be pulling in not just static geodata, but also providing us an opportunity if we want to develop sensor networks for instance, parking management, where you want to say, okay, what parking spaces are available or what micro mobility options are available. It's all able you're able to create a pipeline into this data platform that can then support, to what you're talking about, Mary, open data space where people could come access it. You can work with schools to train them on how to use this open data platform, pull the data down, work with UConn or any other university that's interested in supporting this. But then it also provides opportunities for these visualization tools and then analytics. So this is the sort of high level architecture that we're looking to establish through this grant. So it's South Norwalk Community Plan specific in the evidence-based planning. And one point to your question, Mary, is that we're obviously going to have part of this we're paying is for a consultant team to help bridge those gaps. We're not just going to be kind of dumping it on people and be like, hey, make these connections with yourself. We're going to, help try to carry, work with them, work with everybody to figure out, how these decisions are being informed. But it's a bigger vision. It isn't just, this is supportive of the plan entirely, but what we're creating, I think, is a very strategic asset for the city as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
How do we move from a strategic asset into action? How do we go from all this information and set priorities?
Yeah. So we did a smart city needs assessment. I did include it in the packet tonight, and I kind of talked about the universe of things that we want to do with this, whether that's, Robert Stowers wanting to be able to monitor maintenance activities, or Jim Travers wanting to do parking sensors. So there's a number of use cases that we have prioritized, and those are the reason why I bring those up is those are kind of like the two in the city that we've identified as lower hanging fruit, and then also the South Norwalk Community Plan. But the first step in anything that we want to do is doing what we're doing today, is setting up this urban data platform, which is the centerpiece of it. And then we're going to deploy it for the South Norwalk Community Plan while concurrently working on these other smart city needs assessments. In terms of prioritization, I think there's an element we need to get it stood up, and then we need to, some people, it's still an education process even within the city, and then have those discussions, John. But there's very tangible things that we're trying to do with it, and those are the top three right now.
Brian, will it also include public health data?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it could digest anything. It's whatever we want to put into it is what the what the urban data platform effectively does is it harmonizes these data sets that are disparate so that then we can work with them. So we're going to roll in Deanna. Deanna was involved in the smart city needs assessment from the start of this, from the health department.
Okay. Any other questions, thoughts, observations? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to authorize the agency's executive director to negotiate and execute. That's so moved by Mary and seconded by David. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. And that takes care of the agenda, I guess. There's no new business unless someone likes to bring something up. Old business? None? Who would like to make a motion to adjourn? Lisa, seconded by David. Let me see if we get a unanimous vote here. All in favor?
I got you out by 6:30, Mary.
I abstain.
Thank you all.
Good night.
Have a good night, everybody.
Bye.